Well, thank you everyone for joining us for the second panel in our ongoing commission speaker series as we explore the journeys of 4 amazing women and their civic endeavors and the importance of getting engaged in your community as young adults. So I'm going to give brief introductions because everyone on this panel has done amazing things, but you can find their full bios on our website. So I'm just going to give some brief introductions before we jump right into the questions. All right. Joelle Gomez was appointed CEO of Children's Home of Stockton in October 2016. She spent 24 years as CEO at the Women's Center Youth and Family Services. In addition to chairing the San Joaquin Human Trafficking Task Force, Joelle is a board member on the California Alliance for the Child and Family Services, the St. Joseph's Medical Center Transitional Advisory Committee, and commissioner on the Children's Coordinating Services Commission and the California Commission on the Status of Women and Girls. Dr. Alisha Wilkins is an organizational psychologist with over 17 years of public affairs and government relations and experience in both the for-profit and nonprofit sector. She joined the Temecula community in 2002 and has been an active and engaged community member ever since. Dr. Wilkins is the owner and founder of HeraHub Temecula and has also served communities and residents across the state in an official capacity. She served on the Commission on the Status of Women and Girls from 2014 to 2023, advocating for women's pay equity and engaging girls in STEM. She currently serves on the board of the Fair Housing Council of Riverside County and board member for the Inland Empire's chapter of Run Women Run. Sade Elhawary invests her energy in the fight for justice and liberation, both in her career and personal life. She has served as a femme mentor to countless young folks, foster mother in time of crisis, college counselor at her alma mater, youth organizer in South Central, and high school history teacher. Most recently, Sade led the youth engagement strategy to help elect the first woman and Black woman as mayor of Los Angeles. Standing on the shoulders of generations before her, Sade is immensely proud of her organizing career at Community Coalition, where she helped fundraise $12 million to build an unprecedented center to train and support activists for the social justice movement. Sade has spent over 15 years tackling issues of equity and access, committed to building solidarity to transform underserved Black and Brown communities. Michelle Teran-Woolfork joined the Commission on the Status of Women and Girls in 2022 as the Director of Policy and Legislation. Prior to the commission, Michelle served as a legislative director to Assemblywoman Sharon Quirk Silva. She also worked as a legislative aide for Assemblywoman Susan Talamantes Eggman and Christina Garcia. Prior to working in the state capitol, Michelle worked for the United Farm Workers, where she advocated for the dignity and respect of farm workers. She led a number of political campaigns and was instrumental in the passage of AB 1066, which extended overtime wage protections to farm workers statewide. Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. Excuse me. And we'll jump right into the questions. So
excited to Michelle, be here. It's an awesome group of women.
Yes, it is. It is. It is. It is.
Really.
I'm going to start with Michelle. I'm going to start the panel. No pressure, Michelle. I'm going to start the panel off.
Okay.
So many of our young folks today listening or that will watch this later are either majoring in political science or thinking about majoring in political science. And what factors and experiences led you to choose political science as your major at UC Merced? And how has your academic journey in this field, along with your lived experience, influenced your understanding of civic engagement and the role of young people in shaping the best political landscape?
Yes, thank you, Kim, for the question. I think this is an exciting journey that you all get to be on, and it's never too early to get civically engaged. My journey at UC Merced started, actually, I was a psychology major, and I switched over to political science pretty quickly after taking my first intro to political science class. And my freshman year, we actually had a really neat experience where our student body was putting together love letters that they were going to send for Valentine's Day to Michelle Obama, who had just become the first lady. And this was really exciting. And the idea was that because UC Merced was going to have their first full graduating class, how neat would it be if now our first lady would come to UC Merced and be the keynote speaker. And I wrote one of the letters and, thought, if this is something that we can do, it just speaks to the power that we have in getting involved. And lo and behold, she came to UC Merced and she spoke at the graduation, and I got to be there to see that. And it was after that I was like, okay, like I thought I wanted to go down one path, but actually I see the power that there is when people get involved. And UC Merced being very brand new, very small school in Merced, where it's like in the middle of nowhere, where we're literally in a cow field, and we got Michelle Obama to come out. It just speaks to, again, what grassroots advocacy can do. And that was really kind of what got me super excited. I've always been a history nerd. I love to learn about the law, and taking these different courses and learning how government structures are different in other nations and how we're similar. That's really what got me excited. And after that, I just started volunteering on political campaigns. I worked with our student government on campus, and, in my own way, found my footing. So my junior year of college, I got involved with the United Farm Workers. I was working with them on getting a bill passed that would have created better working standards when you're working in heat conditions, which oftentimes, we feel the heat just going to our cars, or going into our home, but we don't think about the people that are out there doing the work that gets the food on our table. And that was really the first time that I was like, wow, like, again, what can we do to elevate the voices of others who sometimes go unseen and sometimes even forgotten, And so that was another opportunity that I had. And I got the political bug bite, and I was like, okay, I'm all in, I'm going to keep going. And I've got to work on a lot of really neat campaigns, and anything from registering voters. You can do that now. You can be involved in your community. You can go out there and help people get registered to vote. Even if you yourself are not eligible, you can volunteer to work on a small campaign. I've worked on campaigns that had no money, where it was all volunteer based, and we did a write-in candidate. And what does that look like? It's very different. Educating voters, how do you vote for someone that is a write-in candidate? What does that look like? And I've got to work on really big campaigns. I got to work on a US Senate race in Colorado. And that was really neat, because then you had national surrogates, again, like Michelle Obama, that came in. Bill Clinton was there. Jill Biden, you get to see the two different, but they both have very different avenues. The small write-in candidate, that ended up being successful. The US Senate one, even though they had all that money, he lost. Mark Udall lost in 2014. And that was like a big shock to everyone. That all this money had been spent. And so even when you don't have those resources, when you have that organized group, you can make a difference. And, I've seen it in multiple different instances where, when you just get a group of people that are like-minded, and you go out there and you talk to the voters, and they really see, that this is the difference that you're trying to make, they will show up for you. And you can have $0. As a UC Merced student, I didn't have any money, but I wrote a letter and I helped contribute to that, and it got Michelle Obama out there. And so you just take advantage of the opportunities that you'll have on your college campus. Seek them out. There's always going to be opportunities to volunteer, not just on the campus, but locally. I think that sometimes, in the classroom also, a lot of it was focused on the national aspect of it, but you can really make a difference in your day-to-day life by getting involved locally. And it's exciting. Once you actually get involved and you're doing it, you'll get to see really the day-to-day benefits. And so I encourage you to get involved. There's multiple ways you can volunteer and help out. You can even be a poll worker. I've done that too. And, you get a nice little paycheck, but you also get to see democracy in its process as it's happening. And that can be really exciting too. So just use your voice and get out there and get to voting. And if you can't vote yet, help others vote. So this is all very exciting stuff. So I just get passionate about it. I'm just excited. So
Thank you, Michelle. It's amazing what one action can do, right? Taking one class and then changing kind of the trajectory of what you want to do with your life. So thank you for sharing that. And you spoke about kind of local, national levels. And Joelle, my question is for you next. And so given the importance of youth civic engagement in shaping the future of our society, how can we create inclusive and accessible platforms that motivate and enable young people from diverse backgrounds to actively participate in decision makings at the local levels, the national levels, and even global levels?
So first, thank you for that question. And first, I just want to say this is what Michelle just shared, and that energy, that's what it's all about. It's finding that passion, that purpose, and the fact that you're still holding that level of enthusiasm for what you are doing. The advocacy is just phenomenal. I will say that, of course, civic engagement really takes on, it means a lot of different things to different people. I wanted to share first, Kim, a little bit about kind of how I kind of arrived in the place that I am and have helped to mentor and bring up other young people into advocacy and other opportunities. But really, I put so much on where I am, what I've accomplished with my father. I had a really strong and loving family. Mom and dad were just amazing role models. We lost my dad at a very early age, which I think kind of instilled in me this kind of need to get things accomplished quickly because we just don't know how much time we're here on this earth. But at the same time, I go back to my dad's profession. He was a farm labor contractor. And there was a very pivotal time when I was in middle school and my sisters, I have two older sisters and a younger brother, we were in the living room and just outside of the front window was our main like hose, the water, the lawn hose. And my dad had a number of his crew coming to pick up their paychecks as they had always done. And it was a hot summer day. And we remember a couple of the men, just taking some water from the hose. And my sisters and I were kind of giggling and making fun of these individuals. And I will never forget my dad coming in and telling us how incredibly disappointed he was with us. The fact that these individuals have so much sacrifice and hard work that we could never fathom. And the fact that we're making fun of them, he just gave us the biggest scolding and an understanding, more importantly, about advocating for those who have less or little or nothing. And it struck a chord with all of us. And I tell you from that moment, because it still gets to me, I get embarrassed, that you forget what hardships or what people bring to the table when they're first starting out. And so from that moment on, I just had this drive to really help others who had less and didn't have a voice. So I think for the last 31 years of my work, no matter where it was or what I was doing, it's always been about advocacy, but also really bringing up other individuals, young people, to understand how they can be involved. And engagement, like I said, I think.
You muted yourself, Joelle.
Oh, sorry, Joelle.
Sorry, you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
So I was just saying that I think engagement takes so many different forms, and I think it's first and foremost getting involved, taking action, and seeing the opportunities, whether it be joining a committee, a youth advisory group, but stepping up even when you don't feel you know what you're doing, even when you don't feel you necessarily have the confidence or the wherewithal, you're not even sure what you're getting yourself into. I tell you, it will serve you well if you simply don't question yourself and just move forward and get involved. I have seen over my career, whether it was working at the Women's Center, which was working with survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking, and I was there for 24 years. We were very literal and deliberate in trying to recruit young people to be at the table, to get involved, to go through our volunteer assistance program, to learn how to be an advocate, to learn how to respond to survivors' needs. And I'll tell you one story that I was just so proud of. This one young girl, her name is Sarah. She was a student at Lodi High. She advocated with her mom's permission because she was underage. You had to be at least 16 with your parents' permission to go through our victim assistance training, which is pretty intense. And she had the approval from her mom, but she wanted to then really get employed or volunteer permanently with the Women's Center. And she went successfully through that program. But what was really, I think, touching was she wanted it to do something more than just stay with her and her experience. She wanted to involve other students at Lodi High. And so she took on her senior project, which was pretty big, to pull off a forum which took place at the Lodi Library. And she hosted about, I think there were close to 75 high school students to learn about the effects of domestic violence, the effects, and more importantly, about youth, children who are witnessing violence and what they can do. So she was already becoming such a strong advocate, and it really was, I think, important, the fact that she wanted to take on this volunteer opportunity and continue it even after she graduated from high school and went on to college, and then to identify in that community where there was a domestic violence agency to get involved. So my point, I guess, is, no matter where your interest, your passion is, whether it's through a political lens or a social justice lens, there are so many opportunities for you to find your contribution, your fit. I also think it means a lot that people find mentors. And I've always prided myself about sharing my expertise, my support in any way for individuals who want it, especially our young folks. And that's actually why I think what we're doing right now at Children's Home of Stockton, in September of 21, we opened up Catalyst, which is a transition age youth program. So we're bringing in young adults, 18 to 24, who are homeless or at risk of being homeless, and we're mentoring them. And, today I'm with one of our participants who I'm just beyond inspired by, because he is so open to just, getting on this, as he says, straight and narrow and figuring it out and becoming an adult, and then wanting to give back. So, civic engagement really takes on so many forms. And again, first step is just trusting yourself and putting yourself out there and showing up.
I love it. Thank you so much. Yeah, trusting yourself, putting yourself out, it's like, even if it might be uncomfortable, or you don't know anybody there, or you've never done something before, you just lean into that and trust that it will be okay. And it usually turns, 100-fold, because you're taking those steps, like you said. Thank you for sharing that story about that young woman who, was underage, and then she volunteered, and then she, had the forum in her community, and then, it's just it's like a domino effect, all
Right.
these, it's just lovely. Thank you for sharing.
That's great.
All right, so speaking of engaging youth, Sade, you in 2022 well, you elected, but LA elected Karen Bass, their first Black woman as mayor of Los Angeles. So can you tell us a little bit about your role in that campaign and leading the youth engagement strategy, the ways in which you engaged the youth, and why it was so critical for youth to be involved in that process?
Yeah, of course. And thank you so much for inviting me to be here. And nice to meet all the young people who are here. I'm excited that we could share our stories and our experiences. So for the mayoral campaign, I think one thing that was really important is that young people wanted to get involved, but there wasn't someone who could bring them together and be able to help them focus their energies, right? So like young people were coming to the campaign office, but there wasn't an adult kind of organizing them. And it's not to say that you have to have an adult, but because I think there were so many young people and they wanted to hang out, it was like, how do we focus that and really support them in thinking about how to contribute to the campaign in a positive way based on what they wanted to do. So not that the adult, right? Like, so when I came in, it wasn't about me telling them what they should do. It was, what do you want to do and how can I help you get there? How can I help you with those different steps to making it happen? Overall, we had probably in the beginning, like 50 young people that I met who were just excited and got to meet Karen Bass early on. And they did everything from planning events from beginning to end. So they came up with the idea. The first event we had was called Boba with Bass. So all these young people, we got to go to a boba shop in Koreatown here in LA, and they figured out a way to get the boba to pay for a certain amount of free bobas so the young people could get free boba. They also got gift cards for raffles. They came up with cool activities for the young people that were there to get to know each other. They did like not a debate, but like a question and answer session where the young people would ask the mayor like different things about like who was her favorite celebrity growing up, or how was she like in high school, or different things that kind of connected her more personally to them. But also then they got to ask like political questions about her policies and things like that. And so they did everything from planning those pieces to the logistics. They coordinated, they got the flyers, they did all the outreach to make sure young people showed up. And we had over 100 people there, and they only had like 10 days to plan it. So it was really exciting to make sure that young people were able to raise the visibility of the campaign for other young people, right? Like you all like TikTok, you all like Instagram, you all like social media. You all want to see what's going on. What makes it exciting? Why would I get involved, right? Like Karen Bass, she's pretty hip, right? She's pretty cool. But I think young people get excited when other young people are also excited. And so being able to see what young people were posting on social media, one of the groups that I had, it was a committee of youth who did social media. They created a TikTok that had over 150,000 views when they first started. And it was so exciting to see this is their ideas coming to life, and me just supporting them with making it happen, having a level of structure on the campaign, right? So that they could meet once a week. Okay, so if you're going to meet, what is the meeting going to be about? What's the agenda? And who's going to be in charge? Who's going to lead the meeting? Who will facilitate it? How can you make sure that you follow up with the people that said they're going to do what they're going to do? When can you meet to do the content creation, right? So young people actually would create videos in Karen Bass's office. One time they did like a full house video where they like showcased the whole team and they made it kind of cool like that, right? All these things that I would never think of on my own. I'm not that cool, but that because they had the ideas and they had the support, they were able to make it happen. And I'll just say a couple other really cool things. One is Karen Bass herself, one of her favorite things to do on the campaign was hang out with Youth for Bass. So whenever we had an event, she would always show up and like really be gracious in talking to all the youth and taking pictures with them. We did an event with Bernie Sanders because the youth said, you know, we want to know that you're really progressive, and we want to know that someone really amazing like Bernie can actually show his support for you. And they got to hang out in the tent on the side of the big event with like 2,000 people. It was just 50 of them in a tent with Bernie Sanders asking their own questions. And they made that happen because they told Karen Bass, this is what we want. And they also did youth like a youth talk back, which is kind of like a town hall, but town halls sound boring. So they did like, youth led everything. They did a Kahoot. They invited all these people from Young Dem clubs, and they did all their events in different parts of the city. The last thing I'll say that I thought was really dope that they did was called the Kickback for Karen Bass. So we called it the KB for KB, and they did it at the beach. And they created this kind of like space where it was all KB decked out. And then the young people got Earl's Grill, which is a restaurant in the community, to come feed everyone. So they had like over 150, 200 hot dogs for the whole community, or for everybody who came. They had opportunities like these huge balloon arches and like really cool decorations at the beach. They did a really cool bonfire where everyone got to, roast their own s'mores. But all of it was for them to make sure that other young people were getting excited about getting involved in voting for Mayor Bass. And that's such a huge deal because young people oftentimes are told that your voices don't matter, or that young people don't vote, or young people aren't going to make a difference in this election. And it's not true. In the last 2 elections, we've heard the impact that young people have had on helping Biden to win and the presidential election, and helping to keep the House, right? In the 2022 election, and in particular with Mayor Karen Bass, you saw how many more young people voted than ever before. So thank you for that question, but really, really excited about the impact of the young people. It's you all that really make a difference, and we're just here to help develop that leadership.
I love it. It's I wrote a bunch of stuff. I always write. I always have like a big old thing of notes, and I think 2 things that stuck out to me were town halls sound boring, and they are. So I love to talk back, and and really just like you said, it's focusing the energy. So you were the person to focus the energy, but you were, it's a sounding board. Like really, what are young people are extremely creative, and it's really hard to say no to them. Let's be real, like that they're very persuasive. It's really hard to say no. So I think it's amazing all the work that you and the youth did for that election. So, and what an experience to have them get involved and to learn all of those skills, right? The collaboration, the coordination, the planning, the executing skills, like all of that stuff, and meeting all sorts of people, that they look up to. So that's amazing. Thank you. Thank you. So, Dr. Alisha, another thing that has been kind of top of mind, especially for young for people, but especially for young people, is reproductive rights. And you led the Public Affairs Department for Planned Parenthood of the Pacific Southwest and Riverside County for 10 years. In the context of civic engagement and reproductive rights, how can youth who want to effectively advocate for comprehensive access to reproductive health care and education navigate the diverse range of opinions and policy considerations that surround the issue?
One of the first things that I think that any youth who is interested in the reproductive justice movement should do is read literature and listen to voices of people who look like them, who, grew up in the same neighborhoods. And the reason why I say that is because when I first started at Planned Parenthood, I was like so eager. I was, young, 20 something, and super eager to do a great job representing the organization, of course, right? And so I dove headfirst into the messaging without taking into consideration how it truly impacted me and my community. And so there were times when I felt a little like disingenuous about what I was saying. That was until back in 2007. Some of you probably weren't even born then, but back in 2007, when I went to a conference in Chicago called Sister Song. For those who are unfamiliar with Sister Song, it is a Black women's reproductive justice collective based out of Atlanta. And there I met Loretta Ross, who is a legend in the reproductive justice movement. She is the mother who coined the phrase reproductive justice. We would not have that phrase had it not been for her. But that, having an opportunity to talk to her and read publications by her, and even listening to things that were from people that looked like me, actually helped me to step away from, focusing just on the issue of choice and really seeing it as a true reproductive justice movement. Which took into consideration things like forced sterilization of inmates, or simply the right to be a mother. Oftentimes we focus on the pro-choice part, but it's also the choice to be a mother, and in doing so, to actually be able to get that excellent maternal care during labor and delivery. Access to contraception. I remember, hearing about a woman who, had to make a choice between, paying for her birth control pills or paying for her bus pass to go to work every day. So it's that access issue. So it's so much bigger than, the issue of choice alone. And once I, had an opportunity to learn, like I said, learning especially from diverse perspectives, that's when I really began to, be able to speak on the issue in a much more authentic way.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I think it's, so many times we're so eager to jump right in, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it is really important to take a step back and, like you said, read the literature and listen to people, and especially, like you said, people that look like you, right? So you have
Mm-hmm.
that kind of comprehensive outlook. And you also said access. And I think, that to me,
Mm-hmm.
when you said it's not just about choice, it's not getting tunnel vision. It's a very comprehensive outlook. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Appreciate that.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's see. Okay. I'm like, next. No. So to make sure. Okay. So I know this. So Sade, I want to ask you this question. We might have touched on this a little bit, but it's kind of worded a little bit different. So I've been thinking a lot about California is such a big state, right? I mean, we have so many different regions, and some people, speaking of access, have more access than others, right? And I think it's great. I love this story. You've been involved in local politics since being elected to student body president in elementary school. I love it. And you have a wide breadth of education experience, and you're also visibly committed to building solidarity to transform underserved Black and Brown communities. So do you have, I know people touched upon this a little bit, but do you have any other strategies or innovative approaches that communities or individuals can employ to foster civic engagement and activism in areas that with limited resources and not as much access?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that's really important is that you always want to start by, in organizing, we teach that you start by appealing to people's self-interest. To get people involved, you have to know what they care about. For instance, with the Karen Bass campaign, everyone was excited about Karen Bass, but they had different policies that they cared about that they really wanted to help get passed, and that's why they wanted Karen Bass to be elected mayor. And so how you get them to be, how you outreach, how you recruit is really starting with, well, what do people care about? And the way you do that is you build relationships. I think a lot of us, we kind of want to skip the relationship part and just get people to come through and like show up and get involved and make a difference. And all of that can happen, but you want to start with making sure you can create a connection that folks really feel like you understand what they care about and that what they get involved in is connected to that. So for instance, I think we often hear young people talking about, let's say, gun violence, right? And if you have a campaign where you want to talk about and get folks involved in that, or Or maybe it's a campaign that's not related to gun violence, right? Maybe it's related to, let's go back to Karen Bass, right? Maybe it's related to getting someone elected for mayor, or getting someone elected in a different capacity, but they really care about gun violence. So how is that person going to actually help with gun violence? And so when you talk to them, the message that you use, the strategy that you have, it's really important to be thoughtful around how do you approach them? What are the questions that you ask? Instead of just telling them why they should show up, asking them what they care about and connecting it back to why they should show up, why they should get involved. I think that's the first step, right? I think nowadays we also recognize that you can't always build relationships, because young people, y'all love a screen. You love being on a phone, or right, like whatever it is that's not necessarily in person. You feel a little bit more awkward getting to know people in person, right? And so you got to slide in some DMs. And when you think about that piece, it's thinking about how do you make sure that when you do that, or when you comment on someone's page, or when you try to get them, you notice that they posted something really fun that they did. Well, if you're going to post on their page and you want them to come out to whatever it is, you're not just going to post and say, come out to whatever it is. You're going to say, wow, that looks so cool. And oh my gosh, do you always do that on the weekend? If you're interested, we also have this going on next weekend, and we'd love for you to come and bring your friends, right? And so thinking about what are the ways that you can kind of do it that way. I think a lot of you all are really big on connecting via social media. I know someone who made friends during the pandemic in London, and then she went to go visit them once everything opened up, right? Things that I would have never imagined as a kid, that is really happening nowadays, right? And so how do you take advantage of the platforms that you all already use, and use those strategies and approaches that some of us older folks use in terms of being in person, and taking that into the strategies in terms of what you already are using, what you're using every day, how young people are connected. And I think there's also, I would say the last thing is, so a lot of what you want to do in terms of getting people involved, and depending on what it is, I'm an organizer, so we have a lot of different like templates and charts, and how you stay connected, right? Just because I met Michelle one day, if I don't reach back out to her, then is she ever gonna come back to anything that I have? You gotta say thank you. You gotta do all that follow up, right? So there's all these different kind of methods to the madness. But one of the things that I really like that we use all the time in organizing is called an outreach strategy. And the outreach strategy includes like, how many people do you want to show up? And if you want that many people to show up, there's a science of numbers to figure out, well, how many people do you have to invite? And then how many people have to say yes? And then how many people are actually going to come based on who said yes and based on who you invited, right? Where do you find them, right? Like the strategies and the tactics have to be connected to, well, if I'm trying to get young people here, or if I'm trying to get girls to show up, or if I'm trying to get, tweens between the ages of, right, 11 and 14, whatever, well, where am I going to find them? And so you have to know, like, where are the places where you have to connect with them, right? Where are the moms of those kids, right? What are they interested in? What are they going to be involved in that you can kind of use to first find them, and then start to actually find the strategy that's going to get them excited. Maybe you show up to their dance class. Well, you better be talking about dance if you're showing up to a dance class, right? And so those are some ideas of how you kind of get people involved, especially because even if they're in dance, they're excited about a lot of things, right? They're interested and passionate about things other than dance, but you have to get them where they are, meet them where they are, so that you can then bring them to where you want them to be.
Thank you. Yeah, I love that. I think especially even so access, or limited access, or even if there is a lot of access, it's like, don't reinvent the wheel. Use what's use the tools that you have. And I think I like what you said about appealing to people's self-interest, building relationships, creating connections, and that it takes so much time, and that's why people usually jump over that step. And that's why I'm always like, I always think it's engagement. You're engaging the community. Don't say outreach, please. Like, don't just say outreach, like, because you just reaching out and touching them. That doesn't do anything, right?
Yeah.
You engage in them. You talking to them. You're listening to them, right? So I love it. I love listening to you all because you're all so excited about this.
And Sade, I think that it's so remarkable to hear, what you did with the youth, because all I keep thinking about is the transferable skills that they are going to be able to take into, their other, future goals, their future careers, etc. And, so often we hear that youth are missing that, ability to interact in person with other people. And it sounds like they really got a lot of that as a result of working on the campaign. So kudos to you. It's awesome.
Right. Okay. So I'm looking at the time and I just want to make sure that I get the rest of the questions in. So I feel like it's just like a speed round. But we could talk about this all day because we're so excited to talk about youth civic engagement. But because we don't have 24/7 hours in a day, Joelle, my next question is, you have a lot. You have a lot going on. Everybody has a lot going on, but I mean, that's why I kept the bio short, because I'm like, oh my goodness, y'all have so much going on. How do you choose how to prioritize, like, how do you prioritize what you get involved in and who you take the time for, basically?
So I do tend to say yes far more often than no. And that's what puts me in the position that I'm in. But at the same time, it kind of goes back to two things. One, I always feel that we're just, it's a race to get with the clock. And I want to accomplish and do as much good and do as much right as I can in this lifetime. So, but the other part of it is, if I'm accepting a commitment to serve on a board or a project that I'm working on or a new partnership, I always look again at what community benefit in the long run will it offer up, and how will that relationship also build even more opportunities, and not just for myself certainly, but like for the work that I'm doing either at the children's home or other outside interests. I don't get a lot of sleep, but I don't think anyone on this on this panel gets a whole lot of sleep, because there's so much to do. And again, I think my commitment to any organization or opportunity, again, in my mind, goes along with, who else can I bring along the way? I'm not going to be here forever, and we want to constantly be looking at, bringing up our young people, and all of you on this panel. I mean, our listeners, that they know that they're the next in line. They're the future. They are the ones who, all of you are going to be making the big decisions and creating the world that we're going to live in. And so you should be at the table, and you should take advantage of as many opportunities as you can. But again, I prioritize by, if it's for the greater good, I have to do it.
Thank you, Joelle. Yes, and you're right about the sleep thing, I think. But you should always take care of yourself. Let me just put that disclaimer. Self-care is the best care. So
balance is good.
yes. No, thank you. And I keeping in mind that how does it benefit the community, and what connections am I making, and who am I bringing along the way? Because yes, you're always, it's a pathway for somebody else, and you're bringing them up. So thank you for that. Dr. Alisha, so I found this quote. Some people only know half the quote, but I found this quote by the late Senator John Lewis, and he said, it says, do not get lost in the sea of despair. Be careful, be optimistic. Our struggle is not the struggle of a day, a week, a month, or a year. It is the struggle of a lifetime. Never be afraid to make some noise and get in good trouble, necessary trouble. That's the part that most people know, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as I was thinking about this quote, and it resonated with me, and I thought it was appropriate for this panel, what would you say to youth today who want to get into good trouble by participating in peaceful protests, but are concerned about possible negative consequences, as sometimes it turns out, there are?
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's a really good question. My answer would be to really know your why Know your why behind your desire to get into good trouble. And not some like regurgitated talking points that you heard on TikTok or something like that, but really taking the time to ask yourself, why does this matter to me? Why does this issue deserve my time, my energy, my passion, so that when someone actually asks you, you can actually explain it. And I can only imagine that with Sade and her students, or her youth, I should say, that were involved in the campaign, that if someone were to stop them on the street and say, oh, well, why do you have that Karen Bass t-shirt on? And they could, I'm sure that they could articulate that, well, she supports X, Y, and Z, or she supports, or she, is this way on gun control, or this way on climate change, or what have you. So really understanding your why so that you can articulate it. And, in case, in the future you find yourself, before a judicial committee like our U.S. Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, and someone asks you, well, when you were 15, why were you working on, so-and-so's campaign, or why were you participating in this particular protest? Then you can be able to, truly articulate your why behind it. Even if, you are, later on in life, you don't agree with that thing that you were doing, you still would be able to speak to the why behind your passion when you were doing it then. So really, really understanding your why.
Thank you. I love that. And yeah, understanding your why, and like you said, knowing, why you're putting your time, energy, efforts towards this one or two things, right? And being able to articulate it. It's good for youth and adults to know that. Thank you. All right, Michelle, I'm going to circle back to you. And going to end with this question for you, Michelle. Because you spoke a little bit about, and I did say it a little bit in your bio, about leading multiple campaigns. And prior to that, working with United Farm Workers Union. And just want to hear a little bit about an experience where your relationship building. So we were talking about building relationships with people. So your relationship building with different stakeholders was critical in achieving a desired outcome in a situation where maybe you had to pivot a strategy in that campaign, because that happens often, I'm sure. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, so there was one particular campaign that was very difficult while working with UFW. They had tried 2 other times to get an overtime bill passed for farm workers. So typically the way it works in our state is if you work more than 8 hours in a day or 40 hours in a week, you get paid overtime. That was not the case for farm workers up until 2016. And well, the bill passed then, but it really didn't take effect until 2019. And it's actually this year in its last phase-in. We did a phase-in strategy to get that passed, but it was a long journey to get there. And this was the third time that this bill had been introduced, and it had failed before. And it was up on the assembly floor. And in order for a bill to pass off the assembly floor, you need a majority plus one. So in this case, it would be 41 votes. We were short several votes on the assembly floor, and the bill died, and I was in the gallery with a group of farm workers, 50 plus of them there. And they look at me and they could see it in my face, did we just lose? And I look at them and I say, yes, I think we did, And thankfully, we had an author, Lorena Gonzalez, who said, that's not good enough. That is not good enough. And she took a bill that she had on the Senate side already that had gone through the process of the assembly. And this was right before summer recess. So members went back to their district, and she said, I'm going to take a bill that I have on the Senate. I know we have the votes in the Senate, and I'm going to move that bill through the Senate this session because it is not good enough. and we're going to get it through the assembly. And my boss looks at me and says, Michelle, you have 4 assembly members that you need to flip from a no to a yes vote. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? You know, I have to go face to face with these assembly members that just told me and all these farm workers no, and I have to get them to a yes in weeks. I only had a couple weeks because this bill had to come back this session. And I'm like, how am I going to do this? You know? And so I'm like, well, I can't do this alone. So I reached out to anybody and everybody that would listen. I enlisted the support of other labor unions. I enlisted the support of faith-based groups. I enlisted the support of political parties. I enlisted the support of grassroots groups that were in the community, you know, anyone and everyone. Because you know what? At the end of the day, this was not just a farm worker issue. This was a workers' rights issue. This was a human rights issue. And it was 2016, for Pete's sake. Why were we still talking about this? You know, it was long overdue. And lo and behold, again, when all of these groups came together and we showed up at the district offices of these assembly members, they couldn't say no. These people were in their communities. They understood the issue. They showed up. You know, I didn't show up alone. I showed up with everyone else, and everyone came together. And when the bill came back that same session, and those assembly members that had said no, they went up right away. The arrow was green, they were up, they were a yes, and we got more than enough votes to get that bill passed. It got to Jerry Brown's desk, the governor signed it, and it became law. And that was an incredible victory for the farm workers, for workers all over California, because it just shows you, you know, that they're not unseen, they're not forgotten. The work that they do is meaningful and they matter. And that was something that needed to happen. And it was a challenge that we couldn't have done had it not been for everyone else that we enlisted to come on board and support. And I really think that that's what made the difference and why I was able to flip those 4 no votes into a yes vote, and what ended up making a difference in this year versus the 2 previous years where it had failed. So sometimes you have to dig deep. You have to get a little uncomfortable. You have to make others uncomfortable if the outcome that you're seeking will be for the betterment of others. And this was certainly one that it was hard, but you know, when you look at what's right and what's wrong, this was certainly the right thing that needed to be done, and people understood that. And you know, we used not just the folks that were on the ground, but also using social media as a tool that hadn't been used before, and really elevating this conversation to the level that it needed to be. And so that was a long battle, but it was one that was worthy of everyone's time. And so I'm very proud to have been able to work on that and to uplift these amazing group of workers that do so much for all of us, you know, and very proud to have been able to work on that and just do this small thing for them that they should have had done many years ago, many decades ago. But here we are. And so thank you, Kim, for that question.
You're welcome. And thank you for that amazing answer. You know, it's, as you were talking, it's like everything that you were saying, like kind of touched on some of the things that we've been saying. So like community, like what is the, you know, how does it benefit the community, and building relationships and using the tools that, you know, you have. So, I mean, it's just all thread, you know, woven together. So thank you for that. And good job. You're amazing. Y'all are amazing. Y'all are amazing. And we barely have any time left, so I'm going to do a lightning round question. Just one, and it's just 2, and you just have 2 words. You just have to answer 2 words, the first and the last name. Growing up, was there a politician or activist who inspired you? And just take yourself off mute. I'm asking the whole panel. So,
My mommy.
Aw, I love it.
I think I said it, my dad.
A politician. It was Dr. Shirley Weber. She was the school board member when I was in elementary school.
Love
For
it.
me, it was Martin Luther King Jr. I think he was just incredible trailblazer and just kind of opened my eyes to all the things we need to do. So
Awesome.
Amazing. Thank you all for sharing that. I appreciate that. And thank you so much for your time today. This has been really energizing. I hope the folks on the call, the youth on the call, you can, react. You can do thumbs up. What are the emojis these days? I don't even know. Heart, clap, thumbs up. Put it in the chat. Yes. Yes. Okay. I see some. Yes, yes, yes. I'm going to do a heart because this has just been energizing, and I really appreciate everybody's time. This is wonderful. And we will be, I did record it this time the right way, so it will be available on our web, and we'll blast that out as well. So thank you so much for your time, and for continuing to do the amazing work, and for sharing your stories with everyone on this call today. I really appreciate it.
Thank
And I hope
Thank
you
you
have a
so
good
much.
rest of
Thank
the day.
you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.